Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to the Drafting the Circuits program, brought to you by Dan Blay Racing Art and Legend of the First Super Speedway. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past weekend in racing, update you on the race news, and preview next week. I've got Richard Youden and Luis Torres here in the studio with me. What's up, folks?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
It's going. All right, so had a pretty good weekend of racing behind us. We had Formula One was in Imola, and NASCAR, their divisions were down in Talladega, which is always a fun race, even if a bit of a crapshoot. Indianapolis Motor Speedway announced some new qualifying procedures we'll get into. Then we have a slew of other just kind of different news on and off the track. But let's start with Formula One in Imola, Ferrari home turf. Ferrari doing well this year, but it was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull who pretty much ran away with the race, took the pole, won the sprint race, got the fastest lap. You know, he got the maximum points out of the weekend, ran away from everybody else. Although the racing behind him was pretty decent, huh, Richard?
Yeah, it was a good weekend back on European soil for the start of the European season, which gets interrupted by Miami next weekend or in a week and a half's time. But no, it was good. You know, it's a great track. It's a great old-fashioned circuit, and to see these cars out there is pretty special. And we were treated to some unpredictable weather, which I think always helps through qualifying and the race. I think both Mercedes got knocked out in the second round of qualifying. Kevin Magnussen, I think, got a P4 in qualifying. So yeah, it was a good Friday afternoon qualifying, of course, and then into Saturday afternoon for the sprint race, and Leclerc had a great start, got ahead of Max, and looked to be pretty much controlling the race there on the sprint race. And most of the guys are on the soft tire, and I think what helped those guys on the soft tire was that Guan Yu Zhou had a spin. He was hit by Gasly, and he sort of was stranded on the side of the track there, which had like a 4 or 5 lap safety car period, which of course, massively helped the guys on the soft tires probably get through to the end of the race. But it appeared that Verstappen was able to manage his tire life a little bit better than Leclerc, and with 2 or 3 laps to go, was able to mount a charge and pass Charles Leclerc there, much to the disappointment of the Tifosi fans there, who it turned out in huge numbers to what they, I think, given the Ferrari performances so far this year, they expect it to be a pretty processional race. But going into Sunday morning, then you had Verstappen on pole with Leclerc second, and it was a little bit wet, a little bit damp. It rained quite heavily before the start of the race, and then I don't think it actually rained during the race, but it was pretty cold there, sort of 13°C ambient air temperature and track temperature, which is very low. So the big issue that they were seeing was they could create a drying line from the cars running over it, but you couldn't really create any sort of dry patches offline, to ease to a overtaking. So it was a bit of a processional race there. And through the pit stops, after it all sort of washed out, you had Verstappen ahead from Perez, with Leclerc back in third, and Charles was pushing pretty hard there to try and get that second place back. I don't think even if he'd passed Perez, I don't think he would have ever been in a position to really seriously challenge Verstappen, because Verstappen all weekend pretty much had the race, race under control. There was nothing going to stop him, and then coming into Variante Alta, the chicane at the top of the circuit there, Leclerc sort of caught the inside curve and span round and damaged his front wing a little bit. So I ended up coming into the pits, change of front wing, and managed to battle back to, I think it was 6th place or 7th place potentially, but compared to what he'd gone into the weekend hoping for was a pretty poor result, considering. So yeah, it's it was a shame that Charles and Max couldn't battle a little closer throughout the race, but it was a great weekend again, and some really good racing. The guys were really pushing themselves pretty hard in tricky conditions there, and Max just controlled it pretty comfortably in the end. So good weekend. The troubles for Mercedes continue, but it was only on one side of the garage, really.
Yeah, see, Russell has finished top 5 in every race.
He's the only driver to have finished top 5 in every race so far this year.
So he actually he's not buried too deep in the points, but he's because you figure Verstappen, he's got 2 wins, but he also has 2 DNFs. So that gives Charles is a pretty good lead in the things, but Max is behind, but not so far behind because it's a long season ahead yet. But then I want to say Russell is right up there in 3rd.
Yeah.
Third or fourth. Yeah. Russell's right up there.
4th or 5th because Harris is 3rd with the podiums.
Right. Right.
The frustrating thing is, obviously there's a bit of tension in the Mercedes camp at the moment, but you listen to the feedback and communication between the drivers and the teams, and all Toto saying, "Oh, this car's not good enough. Yeah, this isn't the sort of thing. We're sorry, though. It's not you. Just we're going to keep working as a group." Blah blah blah. Well, that's great, but at the end of the day, Russell's up there doing okay. So I think it's very difficult to turn around and openly defend the performance of one driver whilst to a certain extent ignoring the fantastic job under very difficult circumstances that the other guy's doing. We've talked about this before in many series of motorsports. Just because a driver is what's the word? Just because a driver is not performing doesn't necessarily mean it's the car. And yeah, I think Hamilton, they need to be looking at putting pressure on him though, because he's not performing fundamentally under the circumstances. Very disappointing.
If you think about it, right? Russell spent his first couple of years in Formula One in the Williams when the Williams team was struggling. So he is very used to trying to get the maximum performance that he can out of a car that may be substandard. And I think that the skills that he's built there at Williams are really rising to the top in this situation where the Mercedes is not a horrible car by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not the killer that it has been the last several seasons. It's not, and of course Lewis has had the advantage of having a pretty superior car. And even when Lewis had a car that was maybe difficult to drive or had a poor setup, it was still a lot better than what 90% of the grid had. So I think that George's early years there at
for sure,
Williams are paying off, because here's a guy who says, okay, this is what I have to work with. I'm gonna do the best I can, and there he is, and he's right in the thick of it in every race.
Yep. Oh, without any hesitation, he's got to be given a huge amount of credit for driving. I just think it's a shame that people are focusing on Lewis's poor performances rather than George's stellar performance in reality that has really sort of, I think putting Hamilton in a difficult position. Hamilton's got to pick it up. Hamilton's got to really start to, start to show what he's capable of. We all know what he's capable of without any hesitation. And, another guy who's driving incredibly well this year is Valtteri Bottas. drove a fantastic race this last weekend in the
he
Alfa Romeo.
Finished in the top 5. Yeah, he was right behind Russell.
Yeah, so this guy who was also run at Mercedes in many people's eyes is really stepping up. So I think you've got to give the guy credit, credit where credit's due, and it definitely is in both George and Valtteri's case there for sure.
Yeah, and Valtteri, of course, the guy who's been driving the Mercedes. Well, here he is moving to a car that's probably not quite up to the spec of the Mercedes, and giving it all he can.
Yeah,
and then
he deserves a chance in one of the big teams. That boy
sure does. Yeah, and another guy, third place, Lando Norris.
Lando
having a good season there. McLaren
certainly benefited from Charles' issue there and spinning out, and also probably
absolutely
bunting off Carlos Sainz at turn 2, I guess it is technically, on the first lap. But you got to make hay while the sun shines, as they say, and credit where credit's due. It's not your fault that everybody else is struggling.
No, as long as you keep it on the track, the other guys can do whatever they want. Yeah. So, and then you just reap the benefits at the end of the race, though. But again, it's good to see Imola back on the schedule here. It's again, that was some that benefited from the pandemic years. And it's great to see such a big crowd in Italy, because Italy being one of the countries that was hardest hit. In the early part of the pandemic. So it's just great to see all those fans out there cheering on their Ferrari drivers, even though it was Max for the win. So we're off to Miami next, which will be interesting. And
with his fake yacht and water.
The fake yacht and water.
No kid. No, I'm not joking. They literally, it's not like a natural lake or river. They're going to artifact it, which should go quite well. We'll see if we'll have a Nashville episode over there due to it.
It's a new track is always puts a lot of variables out there. I mean, a new track that nobody's seen, that you can do all the simulation work you want, but nobody has put an actual tire on that track. It's a temporary circuit. So it'll be interesting to see, because usually when you get a new track, you'll have somebody that you don't expect will kind of put on a performance you don't expect, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. Evidently the race is sold out, despite the fact that the tickets are a mortgage payment and a half a piece. So Richard, what are your thoughts on Miami?
It's a little bit into the unknown, isn't it? I do fear that it's another one of these sort of designer tracks that we see so often now, these so-called road courses that are street circuits that isn't really a street circuit. It's just built in a parking lot, like we've seen in Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and places like that. But no, I think he's going to be good. I think events like Miami and what we'll see in Vegas next year, are as much about the spectacle as they are the racing, which from a purist standpoint doesn't always sit well. But it's always great to see the publicity, especially living over here in the US and seeing what goes on and the publicity that it's getting and exposure it's getting is great. Certainly a good conversation point for people that, when I first moved here 7-8 years ago, didn't know what Formula One was. Now they're watching every race, and makes I'm not the boring one at the parties anymore.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see. It's
anyway.
Yeah, it is. It is going to be a lot about the spectacle, the glitz and glamour. I'm sure you'll have, celebrities left and right there. I'm sure they'll have some of the biggest pop stars there performing concerts, and it'll be a fun time for those that can afford to go. I'm sure it'll look great on television. Yeah, but again, this is one that I worry about the sustainability of, just because they're already getting a lot of local opposition. So, and it reminds me of, the Grand Prix of Baltimore that the IndyCar series put on a while back. Now, mind you, Baltimore does not have the glitz and glamour of Miami, but they kind of caved to local opposition after a couple of years, even though it was a pretty darn good event for those of us who enjoy watching street racing. So, I kind of have a little, let's see if this lasts in the back of my mind. There have not been a lot of newly introduced street races in the United States that have survived. I think the most recently added street race in the States that's still going, other than Nashville, which started last year, would maybe be St. Petersburg, which has got a good 15, 16 years behind it now.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because
Yeah.
there's really not many, excluding Long Beach and St.
Well,
Pete, there's really not many street courses.
Yeah, but how many have come and gone? You know,
that is, that's why. But
yeah, many
of
have
them that has
come and gone.
sustainability.
You're talking, Houston and even Detroit's going back to the street race, so we'll see what happens there, because they were on Belle Isle for a while. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I will certainly be tuned in with watchful eyes to see what happens in Miami. But do we want to even try to venture a guess at who we think is going to win this thing?
Which one? Miami?
For all we know, Bottas can pull the upset. Who knows?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Ooh,
he could, yeah. So,
but that's not my pick, though.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, for all we know, Bottas can win it, since it's a street course. Maybe not like Sochi, but fairly. I don't know why I'm thinking of Sochi and Miami looking the same. But
but again, that's another track that I'm saying is similar to the ones where we talked about these street courses that aren't really street courses and all this sort of stuff. Who knows who could be up there?
It's hard to bet against Max, because it seems like if his car doesn't break down, he's there at the finish, right? So Max is certainly a good pick. Leclerc is a good pick. The Ferraris have been strong, pretty much everywhere they've gone. So, but you could be a wild card. Perez could win the things. Sainz could win the thing. Who knows? George Russell could win the thing. The Miami track might suit the Mercedes car. Who knows?
Yeah. Or lo and behold, Hamilton gets it together and wins somehow.
No.
We know. I said low. That's why I say specific words like somehow, implying that it's not likely going to happen.
All right, so let's get an official pick from each of you. I'm taking Max Verstappen.
Go on, Louise.
All right, then I'm taking George.
I'll go for Charles then.
Okay, all right. So here we are, locked in for our picks for Miami, and you got to wonder, if poor old Will Smith hadn't have damaged his reputation in the news, he'd be right down there, right? Because we know Will Smith and Lewis Hamilton are good friends, and Will has that song.
I'll be a slap in the face to somebody. Oh, sorry.
And Will's got that song about Miami. It would just be perfect if he hadn't have, had that little incident at that award show. But it's like,
way to go, Will. You're going to give us Flo Rida instead. Thanks.
Yeah, well, Flo Rida's not bad. So Pitbull could show up. He's a Miami guy, right?
Now that would be better.
So Pitbull likes racing, right? He's involved in NASCAR, so he may very well be there. Who knows? Gloria Estefan in the Miami Sound Machine. Yeah, so. All right, so the Indianapolis Motor Speedway announced some changes to the qualifying format, and I will head off by telling you I will be publishing an article on Drafting the Circuits tomorrow that chronicles the history of qualifying formats at the Indy 500, starting back in 1911 and going all the way through the current changes, which is a very interesting read, and I recommend that you read it because I need the clicks. But anyway, so the new twist this year, right? So day one, we'll go ahead and everybody will have a run, and then positions 13 through 30 will be locked in. And then we'll have the last row shootout. where positions 30 through 33 will be locked in. And should there be 34 cars or 35 cars will be bumped. Right now, we're still struggling to find number 33. So, if we only end up with 33 cars, that's kind of just a mute exercise in shuffling the order of the third row, which at the end of the day has very little bearing on the race. But in the event that two people step up, we'll have an actual bump. Although, so perhaps not seeing the bump this year, that procedure is in place for years to come. Now, that is not wildly different than what's been going on, except for the top 12. We'll then have the Fast 12 shootout, which will result in the six fastest cars moving on to the Fast 6. So it's almost like Q1, Q2, Q3. If you advance to the next round, and then of course the pole will be set amongst those Fast 6. So it adds an extra step, because they used to do the Fast 9. So now they do the 6 to 9. Some people are concerned with, why this manufacturer drama? Why the additional attempts? I mean, if you ask me, Louise, it's no different than what they do in road courses.
Yeah,
where you go, you advance from one qualifying round to the next, right? And as far as somebody said, I don't know why the expense of the multiple attempts. I'm like, golly, look at the history of Indianapolis. The guy's been taking multiple attempts for years, pulling qualified cars and trying again under some of the older formats. So
yeah, you get 3 attempts in a car.
Yes,
that's always been the case. But the only exception is if you enter a T car or a backup to a backup car or a loan car. Like if you lease it from another team, but back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, we would see that on bubble day or bump day, however you choose to call it. Both terms are proper, where a guy would have used up all his attempts and his spare car. So they'd see who had a non-qualified spare car, and somebody would be shelling out some money, writing a check there in the garage to buy somebody's car, hastily apply their own decals on it. Yeah, the infamous Marlboro.
He had a Marlboro Duracell, or I thought it was a Marlboro Miller Genuine Draft.
I thought so for years, but I think I found out many years later it was Bozel's car.
It was Bozel's car, yeah. So yeah, you hastily apply your decals and then go try to qualify that one since you used up your other attempts. But yeah, those days are gone. And I was talking about the lack of the 33 cars with somebody, and they saw, with all this, but if you think about it, right, a couple of years ago we would be able to get 33 to 35 cars for Indy, right? But we only had 22 full-time cars, right?
Yeah.
Well, now we have 27 full-time cars, right? And we're struggling to get that 33rd car at Indianapolis, right? So to me, that's not a bad trade-off, because you don't have these guys able now to enter 2 additional cars or an additional car or 3 additional cars for the 500, because they're running more cars during the full season. So, so there you go. Maybe you don't get a bump at Indy, but you get 27 cars every week. And I don't think that's a bad thing. How about, what are your thoughts?
I don't think necessarily is a bad thing. It's the closest we've gotten since 2011, when there used to be like pushing 30 on a frequent basis. We're on par to it. Sure, we don't have many part-time teams, which explains why there were like well over 30 cars in 2011. But at least it's quality rides, and it's just they're more concentrated on what they got. And it's just the expenses are kind of hard to come by. And it's also, I saw somewhere where, why not reward the pole winner the 500 as a bonus money? Of course, they're going to get points. It's 12 through 1. Pole sitter gets 12 points, and then 12 will get just a single point.
The pole sitter gets $100,000.
Yeah, I think these either don't remember or it's not as publicized enough to the person's eye.
Well, the thing is, it's been $100,000 since about the 90s. You know what I mean? Maybe they should kick it up. You know,
I'd say so. Honestly, bump it about another 100,000 or so. To kind of further incentivize.
Yeah, well, somebody as a sponsor needs to jump in and sponsor that. So, but at the on the bright side, there have been a slew of new sponsor announcements in IndyCar. You've got guys left and right announcing new sponsors, including Rahal has what's it called? Hard Rock, or no, it's not Hard Rock. Is it called Hard Rock?
Something else. I know is Dale and Amy Earnhardt.
Dale. It wouldn't be Hard Rock because that's the cafe, and they would get into. But it's a vodka that's made by Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be on Graham Rahal's car for one of the Iowa races as the primary, and then they'll be on the car the rest of the season as a secondary. So I just think it's kind of neat that Junior chooses to sponsor, use to put his brand on an IndyCar, because we know Dale is a fan of IndyCar racing. If you watch his podcast, Dale Jr. Download, some of his best interviews are when he gets IndyCar drivers on there. And you can just tell in his interview style that he has a lot of respect for what those guys do. And then, of course, the time he was, when he's been in the booth or, on site in Indianapolis at the bequest of NBC, you can tell that he really enjoys it and is really interested in what IndyCar does. So I think that's pretty neat that he's taken that step and utilizing his vodka brand as an IndyCar sponsor.
No, for sure. It does bring some eyeballs and also kind of endorse the brand somewhere with a longtime veteran like Graham Rahal, especially at Iowa, where it's very hyped and publicized as one of the marquee races of the year. And I say marquee in terms of how Hy-Vee has stepped up their game in their marketing. To where I said, like, if there was an equivalent award like what the FIA do with like the promotional of the year for a Grand Prix, you can probably put Iowa as a strong contender for this year if there was an award as such.
I would say Iowa and Nashville are probably the two best at promoting their events. But some of these other, like Texas, not so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a matter of how many people will show up and kind of the return on investment. Because remember, this is like a big thing because it's Iowa's return. It's pretty much their marquee race. They don't have that's their big one because obviously they don't run NASCAR. They know I think they have ARCA still, but not much in NASCAR. So IndyCar is their bread and butter as far as their event.
Sure, yeah. Oh, and of course IndyCar is actually leasing the track. So the Speedway themselves has their money guaranteed whether IndyCar sells tickets or not. But so it's really up to Hy-Vee and the series to pack the stands there so they can make their money back on what they're paying to essentially rent the track from NASCAR.
Yeah, and essentially the draw of the performers as well.
Right,
because obviously people may just be there for the concerts. Like I know, was it Blake Shelton, Gwen Stefani, one of them. I think Florida Georgia Line is another one. Whereas the Texas All-Star race, they have a post-race concert with Banda MS, which is a Hispanic group that has treaded some waters with Snoop Dogg before. But if we're talking about Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani here.
Yeah, you got some big names here. Yeah, but I mean, they did better with their concerts than say Indianapolis did with their Carb Day lineup.
I haven't looked at it. I know, like when it comes to that stuff, it's not in my alley in terms of genre.
Okay, so the Carb Day concert, yeah, it's Morris Day and the Time, right? Who was pretty much big in 1983 and had one
early 90s
one hit, right? He was a guy that hung out with Prince, right? He's in the Purple Rain movie. So Morris Day, but yeah, it's a fun dance band. Rick Springfield, he wished.
Oh yeah. That's
wish that he had Jesse's girl. Yeah, but Rick Springfield had. People know him best for Jesse's girl, but he had, 5 or 6 hit songs over the years that he was popular, which again were in the 80s. And then the lead act is this act called Kings of Chaos. And now here's a band that's never even recorded an album, right?
I've never heard of them. They're like some EDM group.
They are what they classify themselves as a super group. And they are made up of these 80s hair band guys, right? 80s and 90s hair. They're made up of former members of like Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Night Ranger. Yeah, so it's gonna be 80s.
Kind of like the 80s. One they had at Long Beach, which was also a super group where I think one of the frontmen of Sugar Ray was one of them. I can't remember.
Yeah, I do remember they had a long, but yeah, so it's gonna be it's essentially a nostalgia act with several guys from these bands, but they'll be playing all the hit songs that they had. So it'll be, if you grew up in that era and you like that music, don't underestimate how fun that show is going to be, because I grew up in that era and I really enjoy that kind of music. So, you're going to be hearing some Guns N' Roses and Skid Row. And
if I had a sliver of time to check it out, I'd probably check it out, but there's no guarantees. But if you want to really get in that threshold, you probably have to get some of the major acts of today, whether they're a sister group or pop artists, but all such are touring right now because music tours are back and running heavily.
Right. Well, Indianapolis.
So that's another catch.
Yeah, Indianapolis sort of has this format that the Carb Day concert is always seems to be a nostalgia act, right? The Legends Day, the Saturday concert is always a country act. Then, of course, the race day, the Snake Pit, that's your electronic music and DJs and all the crazy stuff that the young people like. And they pack them in over there. Those people don't even watch the race, but they have a great time. And, they buy a ticket just like the rest of us. And that money's going into the coffers of the IndyCar series. So I don't mind it, but that's in turn 3. I sit in turn 4, and you can hear the bass from over there. I can't imagine how loud it is to be in that snake pit, but I'm not as young as I once was, so I'm not gonna.
It's not my music at all, so I steered clear from it.
It's not mine either, but young people have a great time with it. So and again, it's a successful event that they're bringing back after a 2-year absence, so they're expecting a good crowd over there. So, but
we're
anyway,
also going to get the pit stop competition back with the debut of the Green Firestone compounds.
Yes. And let's talk about the Green Firestone compounds a little bit, because there's a little bit of a misconception that, somebody said, is the green tire going to replace the red tire? Well, no, the green tire is going to eventually replace all the tires. And it's just the type of rubber. It's natural rubber, but it's harvested from a different plant, and it's a plant that's grown domestically in the American Midwest, or the American Southwest rather, and it harvests quicker than your traditional rubber plants and rubber trees, the ones that you would find in Southeast Asia and down in the rainforest. So it's a more sustainable product, but in as far as it having any properties that are not as good as, say, natural rubber, well, that's, all those arguments are offset, because it is indeed a natural rubber. It's just harvested from a different plant that harvests, quicker and is grown domestically. So it's more sustainable, in the fact that they can harvest it pretty quickly. But other companies like Pirelli and Cooper have been using this type of rubber for a couple of years. They just haven't put out a whole lot of fanfare about it. So it's not really going to change much. There'll still be a hard compound and a soft compound. They'll just be constructed of a different rubber. But of course, the initial ones that they put out to display, they have a green sidewall on them, which looks pretty cool. Just, maybe they'll keep the green rather than the red. I don't know, but it's still going to be eventually that'll be where all the tires are made of.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting car day rather than just have the single practice session like we had the past couple of years. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting spectacle once the month of May rolls along. See how that looks against the atmosphere because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, people are still a little annoyed with the fact that the Freedom 100 no longer exists.
Yeah,
I mean, if you ask me, and I know Roger wants to keep the support series off the oval. He wants everyone off the oval except the IndyCar series, and I respect that. That's why the Cup Series is now on the road course. He wants to preserve the sanctity of the oval, and he's had some concerns about the safety of the Indy Lights cars on. But why not run the Indy Lights cars on the road course on Carb Day?
I think it's more or less probably a logistical ordeal because remember you have car day practice.
Well,
I'm not sure how long it takes to move all the stuff. That's the big question.
Depends on who you ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because didn't we see it done once in 20 minutes, and then somebody else say it takes 2
It
days?
takes as long as they want it to take.
Exactly, yeah. Because I want to say they did something where they did a road course and oval in the same day, and
I've only seen it through the same weekend. That was in 2020 when they had the Grand Prix, and then on a Saturday, and then the 400, the final Brickyard 400 on the oval the next.
yeah, but haven't they had? Because they used to do that what they call the Kroger Super Weekend, right? Where they had sports cars and NASCAR running, but they still had practice sessions on the same day, where the sports car were running the road course and the the Cup cars were practicing on the oval, or maybe not. I don't know. But I think they need to add just one little event to Carb Day, because just to replace the Freedom 100. So I don't know. Anyway, but I digress. So let's talk about NASCAR for a while, okay? So other than the Talladega race, where Ross Chastain once again wins a race and busts the watermelon, he was the benefactor of not moving on the last lap. He just kept his place in line while the melee occurred around him and was able to go straight for the line. But the hours and hours leading up to that, we saw kind of a mixed bag of stay in line, get out of line, 3 wide, 4 wide,
fuel.
Yeah, kind of a typical Talladega race there. For a bit there, I thought the Gen 7 cars performed rather well.
It was relatively clean, to say the least, except for the restart wreck that had Joey Logano involved and the worst sounding production of a wreck I've ever seen in my life. But we'll talk about Fox's on and off awful production at different time. But it was relatively clean for the most part, which was, again, it's neat to see because what have we seen since the implementation of stage racing in particular? Nothing but big wrecks and where they wad up 3/4 of the field. This ring race actually went red flag free, and so in just one major wreck, well, 2 of them that just took out the big heavy hitters, mostly from the Ford camp. Pretty much took out almost all the key Ford guys in those wrecks, like your Chris Buescher, your Joey Logano, your Chase Briscoe, the guys that usually are up there or were up there at the 500 were non-factors because they were out early. So we saw a different dynamic of the race where you saw guys that normally aren't up there do well, like Kyle Larson and Eric Jones, and even Ross Chastain.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Jones nearly won that thing. He just, leading on the last lap at Talladega is actually never where you want to be.
Yeah, or pull away because Ross kind of wobbled a bit. It broke up the draft a bit, and then Jones started to pull away on Larson, which if you pull away on a super speedway, that never ends well.
No. But yeah, Jones came close. And how long has Petty Enterprises been trying to get that 200th win?
Since Almirola's win at Daytona in 2014, the 400, that was Rain Shorten.
Yeah, so we're talking 7 years now.
We're pushing on 8. Yeah, we're pushing on 8.
8 years now. They've been trying to get another win for Petty Enterprises. So but
for the 43 because it's now Petty GMS.
Right, but encouraging for them to encouraging for them to have a good run. Although, we don't see another restrictor plate till we get back to, well, we're not going back to Daytona Oval, are we? We're on the road course next time, right?
No, Daytona road course is not on the calendar this year. We go back.
Okay.
We still have the July Atlanta race and then the regular season finale in Daytona in August or September.
The one that's supposed to be on the 4th of July, right? I got you.
Yeah.
Yep. The old Firecracker 400.
Up.
All right. So let's talk about some of the off-track news. Denny Hamlin going to sensitivity training.
Yep. Has to be done this week.
I tell you, so he posted a tweet with a clip from the Family Guy show that depicted an female Asian driver cutting across 8 lanes of traffic, complete with a voiceover with a very, very stereotypical Asian accent, and he put the name Kyle Larson on there. So Denny, and then he says, "Oh, I apologize if some people took that wrong." I'm like, you should have known better.
or better yet, like as the initial tweet, I said, "Oh boy, this is gonna go well." Then underneath, like a minute later, you put underneath is like, he and Kyle are good buddies. It's just good old ribbing, and then more minutes later, the lighting up and all of that. It's like, you probably should have put all of that in one tweet. It's 280 characters. You can fit all of that in.
He
there.
Probably should have just
not tweeted at all.
He should have sent it to Kyle Larson as a private message and let him and his buddy have a laugh between two friends, right?
Yeah, because the video quality was terrible to begin with. It's like straight out of 2007.
Yeah, like Richard said, that's the least of Denny's problem.
Yeah, I know.
Is the video quality. But anyway, so but I mean, he's that's because we're good friends. Well, okay, isn't that the same thing Kyle Larson said when he used the N-word during the iRacing? He was directing that towards his good friend, and that's just the kind of jokes we make amongst one another. Well, that didn't go over well either. So, but now Denny Hamlin is going into sensitivity training, and some folks are concerned that NASCAR hasn't punished him hard enough because Larson actually ended up being out of NASCAR for a year, and here Denny's going to be racing next weekend. So I don't know where you draw the line with this sensitivity training, but it's, in my mind, it's a bad look for NASCAR to ever be inconsistent when it comes to these sort of things.
Yeah, and let's not forget Haley Deegan also had to go through sensitivity training for using a certain word on a Twitch stream just because somebody moved her out of the way or whatever, or I forget what the context is. Either or, it's one of those ordeals where it's kind of split. I hate to say, unfortunately, it's split. There's people that shouldn't have tweeted. There's others that found it funny and all of that. And it's just like each their own. But you just got to be careful what you post, honestly. You just got to be careful.
Yeah, that's the problem with it. At the end of the day, it is actually kind of funny. And I'm sure Kyle Larson maybe had a good laugh at it. But you're going to understand the world we live in this day and age. A lot of people are, very sensitive. A lot of people are very concerned with political correctness. A lot of people want to use the tag racist on nearly everything, what used to be considered a cool Halloween costume years ago is now racist, terms that were used regularly are now deemed offensive, like the term Haley Deegan used, that was, years ago, that was how you referred to that. And then they said, well, no, that's pretty insensitive. We need to use a different term for that. Right. Same thing with a lot of things. So, but you just need to understand when you live in the public eye and you're posting on a very public forum, just be careful. If you're a celebrity and you're trying to be funny, Twitter is like a loaded gun to your head.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was on Twitter. It wasn't like on Instagram or TikTok. It was literally on Twitter. You know how NASCAR Twitter can get, right or wrong. And this one is justified, in my opinion, to react the way to react, because one of my editor-in-chiefs decided to write an opinion article of it, which I totally understand. And in that scenario, in that scenario, no, never mind. It's like in that scenario, it's justified. It's like some people take offense. Some people it's just like, well, they shouldn't take offense. It's just each their own. It depends who it is and depends how it affects everybody. If it was Hispanic related, I probably see it in a completely different light depending on the context and what it is. For that one, it was clear bright as day. It was just another one of those stereotypical moments that just people are tired of, and I'm totally on board why they feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, yeah, it's like, what are you thinking, Denny Hamlin? And then we have a case of this kid in ARCA. What's his name? Daniel Dye.
Yeah, which is absolutely shameful. Depending on what comes out of it, he just cost himself the championship. Because there's only really three guys running the whole year that are competitive. Yeah, you have Sammy Smith, who's going to be there sooner or later. That's going to probably rack up a lot of wins when he gets there. But Daniel Dye could have been a championship contender with Roger Carruth and Nick Sanchez. In fact, Daniel Dye was a single point behind Carruth after Talladega mostly in large part because Spotter didn't clear him enough. He got turned that ultimately ended the race in a race that was won by Nick Sanchez. So that's how Roger Carruth got the championship. Lita said the beginning of the season, they got to put up a lot of points on Sammy Smith because if you give Sammy Smith an opportunity to rack up wins and any slip-ups for any of those guys that are running full-time, no matter whether it's like one bad race, it could be a difference. Whether or not Sammy Smith is going to win the championship it's a different topic. But for Daniel Dye, who has worked us up in the late model scene, viewed as a respectable driver for many aspects, he even won a national ARCA race already in his career, to throw it all away. He literally threw it all away. And now you got to wonder if GMS Racing is even going to continue the 43 car. And you basically handed Rev Racing the championship.
All right, we'll have to see how that one plays out.
Yeah.
Because Dye's his lawyers are adamant that once the facts come out, he'll be exonerated. And because we are just looking at allegations at the moment, but the kind of the scary thing for this kid is that he's not just charged with simple assault; he's charged with felony assault for punching a classmate in the groin and injuring the other kid. But he was charged with felony assault. If he's convicted of felony assault, this kid's only 18 years old and they have that convicted felon tag over your head for the rest of your life. It's a killer. You can't vote. It's really hard to get a job. People just, employers tend to shy away from if you check the box and say, have you been convicted of a felony? So it's just, he's really going to have to tread carefully with this one. And we'll just have to see what happens. But if the allegations are true, yeah, it's pretty shameful behavior for somebody who is looking at a career in the public eye again.
Yeah, in a ride like GMS Racing where you have a shot at probably winning a championship and maybe have a promising career. And if convicted, if he were to get any opportunities to race, he would be a perennial back marker for life.
Yeah.
Cut and dry.
Cut and dry. All right, so let's talk about some of the support races at Talladega.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, go ahead.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about another ARCA fiasco.
Let's talk about the ARCA fiasco, and then we could talk about Larry McReynolds and Jeffrey Earnhardt, huh?
Yeah. The other ARCA fiasco so happened in the middle of the race where, depending who you ask whose fault of this, if you ask Richard Garvey, it's Tony Breidinger's fault. Where Breidinger was lifting too much, and then because of that, it might have made contact. All hell broke loose. Where one of the drivers from Willie Mullins' team lost control, and then Garvey, who was trying to avoid it, lifted off, ran into Laster's car, flew up in the air that could have tumbled end over end. Then you had Eric Caldwell in the 7th, slide through the grass. He came across the track. Further back, you had Scott Melton in a 69 car that is primarily regularly driven by Will Kimmel from time to time. Your quintessential ARCA break happened to where Melton was trying to avoid Breininger. I think he barely avoided her. He might have made a slight contact, but because Caldwell went back across the track, gave Melton no reaction time, T-bowed him, and now he has a compressed fracture where they had to cut him out of the car. Fortunately, he's okay. He underwent surgery, but the car completely totaled. And in the video I saw from the 69 race team, it could have been much worse. But the car safeties, like the steering wheel, the way it shifted away from the driver rather than go towards the sternum and all that. So it did its job for preventing any worse injuries that it could have been. So fortunately, it looks like Melton's going to be all right. Whether or not his career's over, time will tell. But because Garvey pointed the blame on Breininger decided to go dig up Richard Garvey's criminal records over the past decade. So yeah, people realized that Garvey has been arrested multiple times and all of that stuff. And that's as far as I'm going to go about that topic because it's just.
I was going to say, yeah, it's like a soap opera.
Yeah, and as for Breininger, it's like, yeah, but you too should realize that while you're upset at the driver, just talk to the driver instead of just going on a hazing spree and just go try to expose somebody, justified or not, over a racing incident.
Yeah,
you don't see Chase Elliott go and find past stuff Cody or his brother Carson where. This is just a fine line how you conduct yourself with social media. This is another example of it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the Xfinity race where it made a lot of headlines of Jeffrey Earnhardt driving the number 3 car. They knocked the dust off of Larry McReynolds, got him out of the booth and back on the stand there to call a race strategy. And pretty good performance from them, although they didn't win.
Yeah, they held their own, but like sometimes throughout the race, they were kind of waiting for the right moment or right time. It looked like there was going to be, but Noah Gragson had other plans, and Gragson was able to win that race at Talladega because everybody's thinking, oh, the 3 cars going to win. 3, Earnhardt, Xfinity, guaranteed win because of pretty much like with Dale Jr. drove the 3 car a couple times when he won, like in Daytona in 02 and in the July Daytona race. And I think in 2011 or 2012. So people thought, oh, maybe this is going to be the race that Jeffrey finally breaks through. He didn't really break through. And in fact, the race was dominated for the most part, by Earnhardt's temporary teammate, Austin Hill. Austin Hill was in control, and then a couple restarts, and then he got collected in a big wreck along with Sam Mayer. And that ended his chance of going 2 for 2 on the big super speedways. Of course, Atlanta's team is a super speedway, so that was won by Tiger, so he wouldn't have been undefeated. But we're talking about the traditional super speedways, like Daytona, Talladega is concerned. But that didn't happen, and as we got multiple overtimes in, Gragson was able to pull it off and got the win, and probably had one big party, which he ultimately did.
Sure he did. Yeah. So good for him. And the Jeffrey Earnhardt thing, yeah, it's a good feel-good story. But, at the same time, I have my suspicions that maybe they were a little lax on inspection because, Jeffrey Earnhardt hasn't exactly set the world on fire. Larry McReynolds hasn't been in the pits in a number of years. Yeah. So for them to go in there, win a pole, and then, nearly sneak in the race win is just, It's a little too good to be true, but I don't like to buy into conspiracy theory at all. But what I would like to buy into is making some picks for next weekend. And first off, let's talk about the Indy cars going to Barber Motorsports Park, which is one of my favorite races on the calendar there. So, Richard, since you've been quiet over there, I'll let you get the first pick for Indy cars at Barber.
Oh, shall I pick a really controversial pick?
Sure, yeah, Takuma Sato. He's won there
Joseph
before.
Newgarden.
Well, there you go.
Oh, I thought the controversial pick was Scott Dixon.
All the controversy out the window. Yeah. So, all right, Louise, who do you like for Barber?
I think this one has a good chance of probably seeing Palou back in victory circle. I still don't think Dixon will win at Barber yet again. What's one of the? It's the annual headline. Will Dixon finally win at Barber? I don't see it.
Yeah, Dixon's been a little off this year. He's still been up in the mix, but I think Dixon's going to have a good Indy 500 this year. Did you know that Scott Dixon is only 74 laps shy of passing both Ralph DePalma and Al Unser Sr. on the all-time lap leader list in Indianapolis? If Dixon leads 75 laps at Indy next month, he'll be the all-time lap leader in the Indy 500.
Yeah, well, we do now.
We do now. Yeah. Of it. Yes. So that's interesting there.
Was it 75 laps out of a 200 lap race?
He's got to have a superb. He's got to have a superb month of May for this.
Yeah, he's got to have.
What's the most? I mean, in the modern era, and what's the most laps led at an Indy 500?
To have won it
in the modern era. Oh man, I don't know. I know the all-time record is 196 laps, but that happened in 1912.
Yeah, it's not quite modern.
I think modern. We're talking about like Montoya 2000.
Yeah, I think he led easy 160. I think.
Yeah, but I think like Michael has it.
Michael in 92. Yeah, I think he led close to 180.
Yeah, and still
didn't win.
Yeah, still didn't win. It's interesting how those who had led over 180, unless your name is Al Unser, you didn't win the 500.
Right. Yeah. So
Michael Andretti is actually 11th on the list of most laps led
on the all-time list. Yeah,
but has never won.
And Dixon's, looking to be number one and one win to show for it. And Ralph DePalma. That guy, he was the Michael Andretti before Michael Andretti. That guy, led a lot of laps and just couldn't get the win. So
he's able to win those championships.
Yeah. But De Palma's the guy that led 196 laps, right? And had a 5-lap lead. And then the car broke down with I think 4 to go. And he tried to push the car around for a while. But then it took the other guy 4 laps to, so they didn't actually pass him till like lap 198 or something like that. So,
yeah, so it's interesting just looking at some, because I've never really looked at this in the past, but it's in the modern era. When I say modern era, since say 1990, so what's that? That's 32. 10 times out of 32 is the person who's led the most laps won the race. So you don't want to lead the most laps.
Yeah, that is true. You can ask Connor Daly, who led the most last year.
Or
not a whole lot.
Max Chilton.
Yeah, Connor led 40. Hang on. Oh.
Max Chilton led 50 a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and that was the most race. Yeah.
Sorry, this is totally going away from what we were talking about. But the driver with the least laps led per year was actually 2013, when Ed Carpenter led 37 laps that year. So and he had the most laps led in that race, but didn't win. Connor Daly was second on that list at leading 40 laps last year.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the absurd amount of lead chase, especially in the first few years of the current chassis.
Yeah.
And the package that I had, but time will tell with the 500. But yes, I said about my pick at Barber. I'm going with Palou.
All right, I'm going with. I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with McLaughlin. It'd be
All right.
it'd be interesting to see Rossi win a race. I don't know if you saw Rossi, a little video they put up the other day, but there's a dumpster that's on fire, which kind
I
of
need to see the whole thing in full.
Yeah,
I've
so-
seen a
so-
surface.
yeah. So there's a dumpster that's on fire, right? Which kind of categorizes Rossi's season so far. And Rossi walks up to the dumpster with a fire extinguisher and tries to turn, and the fire extinguisher doesn't work. And he says, "Typical." So, all right. So, where are we off next in NASCAR?
Dover this weekend, and my pick for Dover, I'm gonna go with William Byron.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Ross Chastain. All right, Richard, do you want to bow out and make it a NASCAR pick?
Yeah, we'll skip this week.
All right, we'll skip this week, but we are out of time. So until next week, I want to thank you, Richard and Louise. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. I want to thank Dan Blay Racing Art. Find them on Facebook. Get your diecast IndyCar made. And I want to thank Legend of the First Super Speedway. Go over to their website, firstsuperspeedway.com, and find a treasure trove of old racing information. But most of all, I want to thank you guys that listen to us every week. And until next week, good night.
Who?